The Medical School HQ podcast, session number 48. Hello and welcome back to the Medical School HQ podcast, the place to learn how to excel as a pre-med student, learn what it takes to survive medical school, and turn your dream of becoming a physician into reality. We're bringing you the most unbiased, honest, and accurate information available online today. Welcome back. If this is not your first visit, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. We appreciate you taking some time to stop by and listen to us today. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Ryan Gray. I'm a physician, and along with myself and my lovely wife, Allison, who is also a physician, we run the medical school headquarters and this podcast. And today we have a very interesting and different format for you. So if this is the first time you're listening, this is not our typical format. Allison and I actually jumped onto Google Hangouts to do a live Q&A. And while only a few people showed up and a couple people asked questions, we had plenty of questions to answer that people had emailed us about. So we had plenty of emails that had questions, and so Allison and I kind of go back and forth and answer those. And then the couple people that were on, they asked some questions as well. So hopefully you'll get a lot of great information out of this today. We talked about some doing extracurriculars and when to start tackling those. We talked about the best kind of Mcat tips on how to study. We talked about picking a pre-medical college, pre-med school, an undergraduate school, and the best way to get into medical school. And we covered some reasons to be a physician, letters of recommendation, and dual degree Dsmb programs, and if they're worth the time. So hopefully you are interested in some of these topics. If you're not, then maybe you'll enjoy next week. But if you are, I hope you stick around and listen to the whole thing. A lot of great information. But first, this podcast is brought to you by the Academy at Medical School Headquarters, an online membership site for helping you through the pre-med process. With monthly office hours, webinars, and a growing library of video and audio interviews and courses, it is a vital tool to help you get into and through medical school. Just go to jointheacademy.net for more information. And by the way, if you're already a member, the day this comes out, October 23rd, we're having a webinar on the Mcat hosted by the Princeton Review. So a nice exclusive webinar. So if you're listening to this and you are a member of the Academy, stay tuned or join us Wednesday, October 23rd at 9 p.m. and you'll get a great webinar. The other thing I want to do real quick before we actually go into the Google Hangout question and answer is give a huge shout out to the 3 people that left us great 5-star reviews. Those 3 are 18D Premed, who says, great podcast. It's from an active duty person, which is awesome. Thank you for serving. We have another one from Rob, who says, by far the best pre-med podcast out there. Thank you, Rob. I think I agree with you. And one from Dirt Doc 8404, and another active duty Fleet Marine Force Navy corpsman and a New York City paramedic. So again, Dirt Doc 8404, thank you for all of your work and what you do. And thank you for those 5-star reviews. If you want to leave a review, a 5-star review would be great. We actually have 95 5-star reviews. And Allison and I are going to do something special when we hit our 100th 5-star review. I think we're going to have a little giveaway. If you've left a 5-star review, I think we're going to do a raffle for an Amazon gift card or something and give that to somebody that's left a review. So we'd love to get to 100 within the next couple weeks. If you want to leave one, go to medicalschoolhq.net/iTunes or you can just do it right in the iOS podcast app if that's what you're using. So, all the intro out of the way. Sorry that was a little long. Let's get into the interview, or not the interview, the question and answer session with Allison and myself. All right, so the first question we have is from Eric, and it's a recent question. I just got it the other day. He says, one thing that is truly stressing me out right now is the feeling that I am not becoming involved in an ample amount of medically related, quote-unquote, experiential activities, clubs, and whatnot. As a freshman in undergraduate school, I'm likely overthinking this. However, I truly feel like I would like to be involved with something that would make me stand out and show determination and commitment to a medical career, even as a freshman. What advice do you have for me? So what do you have for Eric? What do you think? So he's a freshman, and he's worried about starting to get those extracurriculars in.
Well, I think there are two parts. It's important to have extracurriculars. I don't think anyone wants a student who is just a student, because you want to show that you're well-rounded and that you have other interests. But I think it's important to also separate that from clinical experience, because you don't have to feel like you have to jump right into that when you're at work on your college courses, working on making sure you're doing well with your GPA. One thing that you can do is to define one or two really good, really thorough experiences, like volunteering in a medical setting, for example, which kind of kills two birds with one stone. So I think it's important to get extracurriculars, and it's certainly important to get clinical experience. The question is, do you have to jump right in and delve into a whole bunch of stuff? And I don't think so. I think you need to show that you have interest, and that certainly you're going to gain clinical experience. That's 100%.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and this was something that Dr. Politis and I talked about back in session number 35, I think. I'm pulling up the list real quick. Julio's on with us.
Hello.
And the one thing that Dr. Politis and I talked about was the fact that, and this was the podcast about overcoming a bad start to your undergraduate career. And the one thing we talked about was students oftentimes try to come into a new situation, being undergraduate school, and hit the ground running and overload their course schedule with biology and chemistry and all the other pre-med recs. They're trying to squeeze it all in. They're trying to get all their extracurriculars going, and they end up falling flat on their face. And the recommendation over and over and over again is go slow. You have plenty of time. Get your feet wet with your grades. Understand that undergraduate classes are not going to be as easy as high school classes, and get accustomed to being on your own and creating your own schedule, and get a little bit of the college life, and go from there. And then start adding in those extracurriculars when you know that you have time for them.
Absolutely.
And obviously you'll have to make time for them eventually, but you don't need to get them all done immediately.
Yeah, I think when you're 17, 18, 19 years old and you go to college, it's the first time for most people you're out on your own, and there's so much that's new, and so much you're totally in a new place with a million different people and new experiences ahead of you. So it's really easy to get pulled in and want to be pulled in a million different directions. But at the end of the day, college, the purpose of college is still to succeed academically in some area that is going to allow you to do well with a career. So if you're even thinking about pre-med, going to medical school someday, you want to keep that in mind, that you're at school for school, and just as Ryan said, you can definitely add those things along, but don't feel just because you're at the fair, I remember those things were so overwhelming, the club fair, you have to sign up for everything.
Yeah.
So
there's plenty to do. So Julio is on here. Julio, you want to say hi?
Hello, good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
You're live on the podcast, Julio.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
Welcome.
Long-time listener.
First-time caller.
First-time caller.
Awesome. Julio, what questions do you have live for the podcast?
I am currently going through my Mcat practice test and also Mcat studying for an April test date. And, quite frankly, I was just wondering what I could possibly do to maximize my studying.
So I want to ignore that question, Julio, and go back.
That's right. I forgot about it.
And go back to your other question that I've seen before, and that's the fact that you're interested in taking the Mcat as a trial run, maybe in January, and then taking the real thing a couple months later.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like an original or an uncommon thing to do. But I was doing some practice tests, and I figured, what if I, took it in January, voided it, that way I have somewhat of an understanding and somewhat of a grasp, aside from practice tests, actually the real thing, and then taking it again for real in April.
Yeah. So, Allison, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if it's common or not common, but as long as you make it work for you, I think that's what's important. So I think as long as you're practicing, you're getting good study time in for each exam you sit for, that's probably the most important thing. Because if you took it as a, quote, trial run, I think we've talked to a number of people who just went and winged it on the Mcat, and as we've been talking about, right, which I know you're not doing, but that's a surefire recipe for not doing well, because then if you bomb it once and you do really well later, that that can just be a little risky. But I don't think there's anything wrong necessarily with that plan. If you do really well on it the first time, that's kind of a twofer. Great, you don't have to take it again.
No, but he's talking about taking it and voiding it.
But voiding it even before you get your score.
Yeah.
Oh, I misunderstood.
So he's going into it with the knowledge that he's going to void it. And so from a psychological standpoint, and I've already answered the question for him before in the forums in the academy, but I answered it and said, psychologically, and this goes back to my have a plan B kind of thinking as well. If psychologically you're studying for a test that doesn't matter, you're already not going to do as well, because in your mind, it's a trial run. So whenever those long nights come ahead and you need to study, you're going to go, I really don't have to study. This is just a trial run.
I could play devil's advocate there, though, and say I think there are some people who are, very committed and going to study and take it seriously, but know then that the pressure's off. So it could,
but then he's voiding it. So all that work, and then you're going to go, yeah, never mind.
Yes, but I think for a certain kind of person that actually could be useful, because it's like the ultimate practice test. If you think about it,
it is.
You're just, but that it's not going to count for anything. So if it doesn't go well, the pressure's off. So I don't know if the Mcat would love it if everybody did that. Well, I guess they would, because they'd make more money anyway. They don't care.
The AAMC would love that.
Right.
So my recommendation, take it once.
Take it once.
Study your butt off. Take it once. Yes. Do it right the first time. Take it early enough so that you get the 30 days that it takes to get your score back, so that you have your score back in time before you have to submit your applications. Okay. If for whatever reason something happens and you don't do as well as you want, we all have those days. I had a day yesterday I didn't do as well as I wanted on a test, a different kind of test. But if you need to take it again, then you need to take it again. But the test is so grueling and just such a pain.
That's one thing about it. It is not the kind of thing you want to take twice. They fingerprint you. It's a whole process.
If you're going to go into it the first time, knowing that you're going to cancel it, that second time, I think you're going to dread it more, because you're going to know how grueling it is.
Yeah.
I
think that's
a good point.
So that's my advice on that question. Back to your original question.
Garage, the lady door.
Hey, your garage is open.
I'm actually visiting family in Texas right now.
Okay.
What was your original question?
It was about
MCAT study
for the
tips?
MCAT, right?
Yes, MCAT study tips.
So the answer is always C. That's the tip.
Oh, jeez.
C, okay, C it is.
C. Yeah, so I don't know, Allison, you can take a shot at this.
The answer is to tune in for our upcoming webinar, right?
Well,
right.
that's not the general answer for everybody listening.
Right.
People that are part of the academy will.
That is true. Go ahead, Ray. I cut you off.
Will hear that. No, go ahead and answer.
In terms of general study tips for the MCAT?
Yeah, general study tips, like try to maximize the amount of learning to correlate with answering the maximum amount of questions that you do on practice tests. Because you have you have a big disconnect between some students. They study differently. Mm-hmm. You'll find that some students do a lot of content, a lot of content.
Right.
And it's not till they're done with all their content, their subject content, that they start attacking practice passages.
Yeah, and I think that's backwards, personally.
Yes. Other students, without knowing all the material or without mastering all the material, they'll go ahead and start doing practice tests.
Right.
And then do it the opposite way, and then go back and review the rationales, see what mistakes they made, and then try to fix those in the next practice test.
Right. And then there's the happy medium, maybe kind of doing questions as you go along and then repeating questions later when you've gone over the content and are more brushed up on it and able to better answer the questions. I just think back on my own kind of what works for me, and that may not apply to everybody out there, but I think anytime that I've been successful in studying and for a test, it's always reading the content, getting it down, and maybe going over it one more time and then starting with practice questions right away. Because I think if you sit on the content for too long, it gets out of your mind. It's not, in your working memory, and it's stuffed away somewhere. And it's just a lot easier to kind of get lost. So if you're doing practice questions all along, and then going back to the other kind of scenario you said, if you jump right in with questions, you don't have the content to build from, then you're going to get a lot of missed answers. And I don't think that's kind of best use of your time either. So I'd say, doing the content, doing the questions all along, and then you can always go back and circle the ones you missed and go over those, and take that back to the content too, if that answers your question.
Excellent. No, it does. Yeah, it's good advice.
So, Julio, I'll answer the question more data-driven with, and something that I've talked about a ton, I know. The 2008 Journal of Science, the science article that came out about the MCAT and what it really is involved, what kind of questions it asks and what material is on there. And out of AP Biology, undergraduate courses in general, the GRE, medical school tests, and the MCAT had the least amount of content-based questions out of all of those tests. So when a student sits down and studies content, I think, and the research backs up, that they're doing themselves a disservice.
If they're only studying content.
If they're only studying content, and the majority of their time is spent studying content, because the tests your ability to analyze the questions and comprehend the questions and what they're actually asking, and then using a little bit of that content that you've learned and coming to the answer that they want. It's not a strictly content-based test. And so if you only learn content, you're going to do poorly on it. So you need to understand how the AAMC writes the test, the types of questions that they have on there, and you only do that by taking lots and lots and lots of practice tests and actually taking real sit down, time yourself, and be honest with your timing and take a full practice test.
A real simulation.
Simulate it. Go to the library, get out of your normal routine, go somewhere else where you're going to put on some headphones and block all the sound. Don't put on music because you can't listen to music during the test. And actually go and simulate sitting there for, it's going to be 5, 6, 7 hours now. I forget the total time. And see how you do. And actually, and this is where a lot of people fail, is they take a test and they go, oh crap, I only got a 27. They take another test, oh crap, I got a 26. They don't take the time to go through each and every question, figure out why they got it right, why they got it wrong. So that's a big part of it, is taking the time to go over that test.
You know, it's interesting you brought up the music, by the way, because I don't know if that's something that I see so many people doing when they're at a coffee shop. You know, they have headphones on. It's probably also to drown out the noise, but for pre-meds and medical students out there and all of us, they definitely have shown, data has shown that when you're listening to music or other things, it makes sense intuitively. It's distracting, but plenty of people still do it. And they listen to music, like hardcore music while they're studying, and I definitely wouldn't recommend against that.
Yeah. All right. We're going to answer another question that was emailed into us. So, Julio, I'm going to mute you. Raise your hand or wave if you want to say something again.
Do we have another friend in blue, too?
They're there, but...
a mystery person.
Just Life.
Okay.
Just Life.
Just Life, are you there? I do not hear them. All right. So... Elise wrote in and said, I must say that the main stressor for me right now is finding a college to go to that will put me on the right track for medical school. I am currently a senior in high school, desperately searching and applying to colleges. I would really appreciate any help you could give me. I have looked at quite a few pages on the website, and they're all helpful, blah, blah, blah. All right, so a senior in high school. And so high school students... are already stressing. They're already in that pre-med mode.
Yep.
And that's okay, if you channel it properly. Mm-hmm. So Elise is worried about picking the right undergraduate school to go to college.
All right. Well, it's a good thing to think about for sure. I think really what it comes down to is that there's no perfect college in terms of pre-medical.
Well, there's one.
Oh, God. Yeah, the University of Florida. Blah,
the University of Florida is pretty perfect.
Yeah, it doesn't help them wearing a UF shirt in support. Anyhow, yes, we all love University of Florida. But really, there's no perfect college for medical for pre-medical education. I think you, with the caveat that you do want to go to a university or college that is going to challenge you academically and that's going to allow you to succeed and show that you can handle the rigors of a pretty heavy-duty science curriculum, because that'll all factor into your Mcat application down the road. And certainly if you are at a school that does not challenge you academically and doesn't set you up with good science classes, for example, let's say they're the bare minimum prerequisites, but they're not really challenging and they don't really allow you to show your stuff, then when it gets time eventually to go to medical school, let's say, and you're sitting in your medical school classrooms, it's going to be insane. I mean, it's an extremely rigorous, grueling journey, and if you don't have the pre-medical, backing kind of academically, it's going to be really hard to get through that successfully. So I think, make sure when you're looking at colleges, you want to go to a good school in the sense that a school that is going to give you those challenging science classes. I wouldn't also put a big party school at the top of your list, because if you are someone who gets really easily drawn into that whole scene, then you're going to be taking a lot of time away from your studying potentially, and that can also make your grades suffer. But I think at the end of the day...
University of Florida's a big party school and a great academic school.
But that segues very nicely into my next point, which is you can certainly go to a big football school, a big school with a ton of other stuff going on if you're the kind of person who has a lot of self-discipline. Self-discipline is so important as a student, as a pre-medical student, a medical student, because you're always going to have to teach yourself at certain times, and you have to have that discipline to go and sit in the library and get your studying done. So you have to have that self-discipline, but with that, you do want a school that's going to challenge you and support you in your career toward medical school.
Yeah. And I talked about this in one of our first podcasts in session 3, which you can get at medicalschoolhq.net/3, the number 3. And I've talked about this with Dr. Politis as well in another podcast, I believe session 23, where I asked the question from a medical school admission standpoint, does it really matter? Does the name on that diploma really matter? And his response to me was, if a student goes to an an off-the-wall liberal arts school in the middle of nowhere that has 400 students and nobody's heard of that school, the admissions committee doesn't know how to interpret your GPA to judge it.
It's like you're an alien.
To rank it against other students. If you go to a well-known university, and it doesn't have to be the top pre-med university, but if you go to a university that's been around and has produced medical students and coming out of pre-med, then the school is able to know, okay, the last 3.75 GPA student that we got from the University of Florida did this. They were this kind of student. They were prepared. They weren't prepared. And so we know that another 3.75 student likely will be around the same. And so that's where it comes into play with going to a well-known school or going to a small school. And that kind of plays into the whole community college thing that Allison, you were just talking about, the whole rigorous coursework. Admissions committees want to see that you can handle the coursework because medical school is not easy. We all know that. We've all harped on it. It's the whole drinking from the fire hose analogy. And if you strictly go to a community college for most of your prereqs, then a medical school admissions committee might not like that. And if you go to each school's website, they will. Some of them will specifically say that you can't have your prereqs at a community college, or if you have your prereqs at a community college, they need to have been transferred to a four-year college and have that degree from a four-year college. And so you're risking some things by going to community college. And we understand that for financial reasons, you might have to, for timing reasons, because community college might offer the classes you need at night, you might have to do that. But realize that you might be having a little bit more of an uphill battle on the other end. So the ultimate thing to pick a school, go somewhere, and this is what we talked about. Go somewhere. We talked about this in session 3. I talked about it in session 3. If you want to and you need to stay around family, go to a school near your family. If you need to get away from your family, go to a school away from your family. If you hate the cold weather, don't go to a school in somewhere up north where you have the winter.
Yeah.
Don't go to Harvard just because the name is Harvard that has a terrible winter here in Boston.
Oh, it's not that bad. I went to school in Montreal, for God's sakes. You ain't seen cold.
So, but if somebody knows that they don't really like the cold and they get seasonal affective disorder and they're going to be miserable throughout the winter, it's not a good place to go. If they like the beach, don't go to Nebraska. Go to someplace where you know you're going to be happy, where you know you're going to be able to flourish, and don't go to a place just because of the name on the diploma.
Right. I think no college is perfect, and every college student encounters bumps in the road and times that are harder than others, but you do want to set yourself up, like you're saying, Ryan, for the things that you know about yourself. And you could go somewhere that's totally different than what you know, but you have to be someone who's open-minded if you're going to do that and willing to experience new things.
Yeah. So another question I'm pulling up here. And I get this one a lot, I think. This is a student says, I'm currently a freshman. This is from Nick. I'm currently a freshman attending, I won't say the school's name. I am a bit confused on what to do as a career. I enrolled to this university following nursing as a major, but I don't think that nursing is what I want to do. I've been recommended to follow pre-med. At first, I was not sure exactly what it was until I did some research. It catches my interest, but I am still hesitant on the topic. I apologize if my letter seems to be unrelated, and goes on. So I responded to Nick, and I was a little confused on his email because he's saying he was nursing, but he doesn't really like nursing. And so I asked him why. What was it about nursing that drew him to it in the first place, and why is he now second-guessing himself? And he wrote back and said he's not quite sure what drew him into nursing, but he believes it was the fact that his mother is a nurse. What had changed my mind was sitting in a hospital watching all the nurses work and come in at late hours, knowing that they work very much and don't get paid what they should for all their hard work. I decided that I want to aim higher. I am aiming higher to become the doctor in the room. I want to have the highest authority that I have the capability of earning. Forgive me if my explanation seems unrealistic. I am motivated by seeing other people achieve their goal. The question that I ask is if it is right for me to follow this path of pre-med to achieve what I want. I'm willing to put in the hard work and dedication. So, what do you think about that, Allison?
Well, I think for people who haven't listened to our podcast about the 5 reasons to go into medical school and the 5 reasons not to, that's a good one to listen to.
That's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Yeah.
And that was session 45. So medicalschoolhq.net/45.
I think Nick brings up some interesting points. I think wanting to become a physician because you're interested in having a leadership role is a good thing. But wanting to become, quote, the doctor in the room, kind of the head honcho, the boss, I don't think that's a good reason to go to medical school. You can become the CEO of a company. You can do a lot of other things. And the other thing to know is that when you're working on a healthcare team, sometimes the nurses are directing the doctors on what to do. I know plenty of nurses who can run a code and don't need a single doctor in the room. And Julio can probably attest to this from working in the ER. It's doctors, the traditional thing is wearing that white coat and having, kind of the authority over the rest. But medicine, as we say all the time, is a team sport, and it's so important to work together as a team for the health of a patient. So wanting to become kind of the big boss, I don't think that kind of jives with the culture of medicine anymore. And then he made another point. Oh, about salary. So that's interesting too, because there are some nurses I know who make quite a few more dollars than a doctor will ever make. Some of the critical care nurses who are just amazing and work, yes, a lot of hours, but are saving lives all the time. And they are making more money than some doctors I know who are in primary care or working in hospitals, maybe in an academic center. So you can't rely on doctors making money like they, again, traditionally used to. It's a career where, yes, in certain parts of medicine, certain fields in surgery, you can make a good salary, a pretty high salary, but not something you want to go into medicine for. If you're doing it for the big bucks, then you may have a rude awakening down the line when you have a lot of loans to pay back and insurance companies are not compensating what they used to for procedures and other things. And again, money, you can find that in, the stock market. So it's, shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah. What was the ultimate reason that we talked about?
What do you mean, for not going in?
No, for going in.
Oh, for going in. Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, what you want to be focused on is trying to improve lives, the health and lives of other people. And that should be the central goal of what, you are wanting to do when you go in to become any kind of healthcare provider and certainly a physician. And
that's the question that I was asking Nick when I kind of rebutted and said, explain a little bit further. Because if he was going into nursing saying, I want to help people, and nursing is what I know because that's what my mother did. Mm-hmm. And then he said, but I realized as a physician, I have a little bit more authority and I might be able to help in a little bit different way and kind of be the ultimate final answer. Yeah, more autonomy. I mean, all of that is totally legitimate. Absolutely. Then I would say, Nick, go for it. Yeah, go get him. But Nick sounds unsure, and it almost sounds like he didn't really know the pre-med world, which is okay. Well, and I think, though, one of the things we talked about when we saw that email is also that that brings up why it's so important to get direct clinical experience one-on-one with a physician, because it's great, to have an in like that with your family member who's in nursing who can hook you up and get you into a hospital and start shadowing with a doctor. But if you're spending a lot of your time sitting, and kind of watching the flow and not really getting one-on-one time with a physician and seeing what their job is really like, then you're not going to be getting you're not going to get the experience you need to know whether or not it's for you. Yeah. That's it. So keep thinking, Nick, and come talk to us. Yeah, keep thinking. And that really is what it comes down to, is getting that experience, finding out what a physician does. And I think ultimately you're going to find that the physician in the room doesn't always have that highest authority that you think they're going to have. And it might not give you that power trip that it sounds like. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it doesn't seem like you're going to get that that power trip that you want or are looking for.
Yeah.
So
I think reward in medicine comes in a different way. It's not about money. It's not about being the boss and the head honcho. It's really about just the and I don't mean this, I mean this genuinely. It's really about the inner reward you get when you help another person and improve their life, their health, or you save their life, or, and doing that with a group of people is just as satisfying, and sometimes more so than if you were trying to do that on your own.
Yeah. So I want to bring back Julio. Julio, do you have any words of wisdom on that, since you have some experience?
I think Allison had it right when she said, if you're going to be going into healthcare in general, whether it's in the capacity of a physical therapist, a physician, a nurse, even a nurse's aide or a tech, at its central, you need to keep in mind that you are there for selfless reasons, to help the patient and to better the lives of another person. A lot of people go into medicine for different reasons. Some do it for the prestige. Some do it, for financial reasons. But I believe at the end of the day, the passion that has you coming back and going above and beyond is that selfless drive to help another person.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very well.
No matter what you do.
Yeah, and just explain briefly what you do and why I asked you for your input.
I have been in healthcare for the greater part of my adult career. I have been an EMT, graduated to a paramedic, and I actually did go to nursing school, and I currently work in an emergency department as a nurse.
Okay.
I've been a nurse for a good 7 years.
Wow.
And just in nursing in and of itself. So we see, I like to joke around saying that we get a front row seat to the best show on earth.
Yeah.
You see everything. You see people from all different walks of life.
So give me your experience, and maybe you don't have any, or maybe you don't want to say. Give me your experience of some physicians that maybe have that kind of mindset that Nick might be thinking of, that the doctor is the ultimate authority in the room and doesn't work as a team player. Do you have any experience like that, and how does patient care work in that arena?
It's difficult. You immediately right off the bat, you find that those physicians who do get into it for the wrong reasons, there's a disconnect between the team approach to patient care. Right off the bat, they feel, in my experience, I have found that they feel that they're an island unto themselves, and they do a great job of delegating tasks and authority, but they get that self-satisfaction of being at the top of the totem pole. And I believe that is detrimental for a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons is they are not open to constructive criticism, which is huge in healthcare. Yeah. But for whatever reasons, they just, there's a big disconnect between the rest of the staff, the ancillary staff, as well as the nurses or even other physician providers, from them doing the best possible care that they can for the patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that insight. All right. Let's do one more question.
Sure.
What do you think?
However many more you want.
All right. Let me see. So Marvin emailed in and said, I've recently listened to your podcast, Session 12, Shadowing Secrets, and I've wished I had listened to this beforehand. In the past month, I've been shadowing a liver surgeon, but due to school starting soon, I will continue again during the winter break. One problem I am facing is developing a relationship with the surgeon because post-surgery, the surgeon will go to a break or move on to the next surgery. With the goal of obtaining a letter of recommendation, how should I go about further developing the relationship? I feel in order to display my capabilities and interest lies during the surgery, but how should I balance demonstrating my interest and not being too intrusive? It seems easier to obtain a letter of recommendation from physicians as opposed to surgeons, but he meant just from outside the operating room, from inside.
That's probably true, because if you're operating, I mean, you're really focused on the actual technique.
Yeah. So my response to him was that if he's shadowing a surgeon, and we kind of talked about this yesterday when we interviewed a general surgeon for our specialty series in the academy, was the fact that a surgeon operates only about 20% of the time. They are out of the operating room and seeing patients in clinic and seeing patients on the wards the rest of the time. And so you have a lot more time to interact with that surgeon outside of the operating room. You just need to make it known that you want to see clinic patients as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that the general surgeon who we spoke with yesterday mentioned is that you can teach a monkey to operate, which may or may not
it's true.
offend some people out there, but you can't teach bedside manner. You can't teach a monkey bedside manner. You can't teach a monkey about the diagnostic, the surgical decision-making that happens behind the scenes. And I think part of how you show your intellect and your enthusiasm, your passion as a pre-medical student and as a medical student is potentially when you're working and outside the OR, just like you're saying, coming in, showing that you've read about something, asking questions about it. Again, just showing enthusiasm and interest every single day when you show up. So I would think that Marvin has the right idea, that trying to get more exposure, more time with this person, this surgeon, outside the OR, if he's really interested in surgery, is a good idea. And maybe asking the surgeon personally, what clinic time do you have? What other time do you have that I can, shadow and observe with you to learn more?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the perfect approach, is just ask the physician and say, hey, I'm looking to ask you some more questions and maybe get to know patient care pre-op or post-op and show interest in that and ask about shadowing in different environments.
One thing, too, is that medical students are not graded ever on their surgical skills. I mean, I think if you're a good suturer or a good retractor, that's great, but you're not actually graded ever in medical school based on
I was the best darn retractor.
Yeah.
So here's just a quick tip for those listening. As a retractor, which you are as doing your surgery
that means you hold things back, okay?
You hold back skin and fat and bellies.
And you just hold on to metal devices and try to do ankle pushes so that you don't pass out. So
one of the things that I realized early on is that I put too much effort into retracting.
Oh, God.
And I would get too tired. and then I would kind of let my muscles go a little bit. And I'm like, hey, it's not moving. And let go a little bit more. So do the least amount of work that you have to do to move whatever you have to move out of the way. Don't go to a full-on isometric contraction.
Well, especially because if the other person's not holding on correctly, I mean, you could have some disaster. You want to be, it's a body. Be gentle, everyone.
Yeah, be gentle.
But seriously, I mean, medical students aren't graded on that. So you can imagine if you're a pre-med out there and you want to do surgery and you're really excited about diving into the OR with someone you're shadowing, you don't have to feel like you have to impress them with your amazing, spatial skills and surgical skills, because no one is going to be expecting that from you, either as a pre-med or in medical school. Impress them with your intellect and your knowledge and your passion.
Yeah, that's awesome. I realized that I don't know when I realized
You never told me that.
Oh, yeah. It was my secret. So we have Jess just popped on. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
We can't hear you, Jess.
Can you unmute your microphone, maybe?
Doesn't look like she's muted.
No? Maybe we just can't hear.
There,
there we go.
I can hear you.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. You have a question for us?
Yeah, so I'm currently a high school student, and I'm considering going to a Dsmb program. So So I'm Canadian, so that makes it even more competitive. So I'm just not sure if it's worth all the extra work and just for that extra year, just the shorter pre-undergraduate and then the med school. I'm just not sure if it will be worth it or not.
Okay, so how many total years would the program be for the BSMD?
It would be 7 because your undergraduate would be shorter.
Yeah. So those not familiar with the BSMD, some are still 8-year programs, but you're guaranteed admission into medical school. Some are 7-year programs. And some of them you don't have to take the Mcat, which is amazing. Some of them you do and have to get a minimum score, which kind of sucks. But so there's a lot of different options. But I'm wondering, the question comes down to what's the harm of applying and trying to get into a BSMD program?
Yeah.
So you can apply, and if they deny you, then you go to the normal BS track and then go to medical school, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your thinking, or what are you worried about applying and getting rejected and then just going the regular route?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm totally into doing the whole accelerated rate to things because it's really competitive and, you have to keep a certain GPA and it's a lot of extra work, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more along the lines of you don't know if you want to subject yourself to the accelerated program and not really should you apply.
Do you
pros and cons? Okay.
How also just though? How did you get to that you were even interested in BSMD? Have you had experience in hospitals or clinics or?
Yeah, definitely. Both of my parents are doctors, so I know all about that, and I volunteer at hospitals.
Okay.
Interesting.
Got it.
So that's the gut check for you. Do you want to subject yourself to that? Which is stressful. Doing 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school is stressful. Doing 3 years of undergrad and 4 years of med school straight through is stressful. So luckily the med school part isn't really shortened. It's just the BS part, which could be BS in a lot of cases. Get it?
But the other thing, I mean, what's interesting about, and I went to undergrad at McGill in Canada, so one of the things that is different still about a lot of Canadian universities, even just with their undergrad programs as compared to the United States, is that they're so much more focused. I mean, for my physiology degree, I had, I think, 3 electives. And so the fact that they're kind of shortening that may not be such a bad thing. I was so exhausted after 4 years of undergrad at McGill. I was so tired. I ended up taking a year to do some internships and get some more experience, clinical experience, which was really valuable for me. But I think either way, it's tiring. But it's also, if you're at a program like that, you're going to be so well prepared for medical school. And that's one of the things that I so value to this day that McGill gave me is that I was at a really rigorous undergrad. And I felt like when I walked into medical school, yes, I mean, it was really challenging, but I was kind of used to studying every weekend already. That was my life already. So there are definitely benefits to doing that, I think, too. It's just, I think when you're in high school and you're thinking about your future, it's like, oh God, you're going to join this really intense phase in your life. So there may be kind of just that anticipation that, concern in that sense. But either way, I think it's going to be a challenging road. And it's just a question of kind of how many years. And I think it'll ultimately, in my mind at least, it would probably serve you really well as preparation for med school, going directly in like that.
And so I'll add one piece, which I think you asked it earlier. What is it really worth, that 1 year? And I think in the grand scheme of life, that 1 year really doesn't matter. If you start med school a year earlier and become a doctor a year earlier and finish your residency a year earlier, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you can always do things later. That's the beauty of an MD too. I mean, and we just talked to someone last night who during his residency took off 2 years to do an MPH. And, we have friends who've traveled all over the place doing Doctors Without Borders and other things. So, I mean, your life doesn't stop when you become an MD and then you're just working forever. You can definitely do a lot of wonderful things with your degree. And that's one of the things I love about it too. Not that we've done that many things yet, but there's the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Not a problem. Thanks for joining us. So Julio, if you have a second, can you maybe talk about the Academy and what it means to you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I've mentioned actually to a couple of coworkers and a couple other pre-meds at the college that I'm attending about the Academy and how grateful it is. It's just like the service that these two, just selfless physicians provide. I seriously, if I didn't know about it, I would definitely take advantage of it to its utmost, because you have personalized office time, I guess, if you want to call it, or you just have an opportunity to shoot and ask questions to some medical professionals who can help in whatever process, whether if it's Mcat or interviewing skills. They also have webinars that you can learn about different specialties as well. Like I just went over and looked at the neurology webinar. Yeah. And it was really, really good, because as a pre-med myself, I have an idea what I would like to get into, but it's so broad. Mm-hmm. A medical career is so broad, you can do just about anything. So it's good to have a whole bunch of different things that the Academy provides, so that way you can make the best informed decision. Because this is honestly a decision that you're going to be living with for the rest of your life. This is a career that you're going to be having.
Dum.
So you're hoping that you can make the career or the decision that you're going to be satisfied with. So yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, and not just that, you just have a lot of other people who are vying for the same thing as well. You get to meet a lot of other people, and you have the camaraderie of interacting, communicating with other people as well.
Talk about the anonymity or lack of anonymity. Do you think that helps?
I do. I believe that does help. There are other websites that you can just make up any handle or any avatar, and nobody really knows who you are. You can be like Joe Blog from the street or anything. But the thing with the Academy is you use your real name. Most of us do have a real profile picture of ourselves up there. So it's kind of like an online community that you would get in an online class.
All right, folks, that was the Google Hangout chat with Allison and myself, and we had Julio and Jess join us, and somebody else that never was able to say hi. So I hope you enjoyed that. If that's a format that you liked, maybe you want to participate next time, leave us a comment on the comment page, medicalschoolhq.net/48. We'll take you to the comment page where you can leave a comment. Let us know if you like this format. Let us know if we should have one again soon, so you can jump on and be part of the podcast excitement. You can also shoot us a tweet over on Twitter. We are at Medical School HQ. You can say hi to us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/Medical School HQ. Or you can shoot me an email. I'm Ryan at medicalschoolhq.net or Allison at medicalschoolhq.net. Folks, I again appreciate everything that you do for us. I appreciate you spending some time listening to us, and hopefully, as always, you got some great information out of everything that we talked about today, and we hope to see you next time here at the Medical School Headquarters.